Hello folks, welcome to my review of what has to be one of the best looking Toyotas in recent times. This is the new CHR, slightly reminiscent of a baby Lamborghini Urus if you catch it in the right light. As you can see, we've got much sharper lines than on the outgoing model. These very cool looking LED headlights, a more aggressive looking grille. Altogether it kind of looks like the designer at Toyota sharpened their pencil a little bit on this one, and to great effect. Let's have a look around the back. That sharp design certainly continues around the back. We've got angles and creases and lines aplenty. It's very busy, but somehow it all works. One thing for me that doesn't work is the fact they've deleted the rear wiper. From an aesthetic point of view, fantastic. Probably from an aerodynamism point of view, fantastic. You can see that's definitely a consideration here with the slope and the way this kind of all flows down. However, it is nice to be able to see out of your rear view mirror. Let's have a look in the boot. So we've got a decent amount of boot space here, 388 litres, which is a wee bit more than in the outgoing model. That drops down to 310 litres though if you go for the plug-in hybrid version. So something to keep in mind perhaps. The rear seats are in a 60-40 split, so you haven't got that middle split for sort of through loads if you've got two rear passengers, which is a bit of a shame, but not the end of the world. Those seats do fold flat, but the through sort of flow is not completely flat, so just something to bear in mind. I think the space in here is really nice and usable and more than adequate for a vehicle of this size. Nice job. Now, one of the features I really like on the car are these door handles. They're very aerodynamic. They fold away inside the door, much like you see on many a modern EV. Let's just open it up. You'll see they pop out like that, which A, is hours of fun if you're a man-child like me, but also you open from under there. That means that you don't get a load of dirt on your hand if you've been driving through a muddy New Forest like I have today. So to me, these door handles are a win. There are several different wheel options for the car. The entry level comes with 17-inch wheels. This one we've got today's got 18-inch rims on it. And for me, they fill up the arch nicely enough, and you've still got a nice bit of sidewall to cosset those buttocks. So maybe they're pick of the bunch there. And as for the paint trims, you'll see this one's a two-tone with the black roof. That's on the two middle spec trims. The entry level trim is just one colour, so this car would just be white if it were entry level trim. And on the top trims, instead of just a black roof, this whole section here is black. I personally prefer this. Out of every colour combination you can get on it, I think this is the one to go for. So moving on to the interior, and by and large, it's a bit of a triumph. Materials feel very nice quality throughout. Not always the softest touch, but this stuff certainly is. But down here it's a bit harder, but it all feels incredibly strong. Sometimes the hard plastics in cars feel a bit flimsy, and that's not the case in this one. It does feel like a Toyota in terms of the build quality. The infotainment screen is really great. It's nice and crisp, it's responsive, it's colourful. You can see it in pretty much any weather conditions. It's great. It is facing towards the driver as well, which is always a bit of a plus point. You've got Android Auto and Apple CarPlay as standard. I'm connected to Apple CarPlay wirelessly. It does that very quickly without any fuss. And the standard Toyota options in terms of infotainment are fantastic, actually. A huge step up from where they were if you had the outgoing model of this car. I must say, if you get the entry level car, so the absolute base trim car, you do get a smaller screen than this, and I think this is well worth having, so I would suggest you perhaps go slightly up the range. The driver information displays nice and colourful. You've got everything you need sort of right in front of you, so no need to go fishing around in the screen for any sort of information on MPG or anything like that. It's all sitting there in front of you. One thing I will say though is many of you might like to get in the car and turn off the traffic sign recognition as soon as you get in. For one thing, I have caught it out a few times. It's told me I'm in a 30 and I'm in a 50 or something like that. And as soon as you get over the speed limit by 1 mile an hour, it starts beeping at you. It is only quite a quiet beep, but it does carry on for a little while. And unfortunately, there seems to be no way of permanently disabling that feature. It's one of those things that's there for your safety, but you may have a preference not to have it. If that is your preference, you need to switch it off every time you get in the car. Gear selector is this dainty little effort here. Feels great actually. I'd much rather have that than like big pushy buttons or a weird little switch thing. This is a nice medium. It's not a huge lever that gets in the way, but it does the job very nicely. A couple of cup holders. We've got a wireless charging pad in this particular model. And then look at this. We've got physical rocker switches for the air conditioning controls. We've got actual buttons for things like your rear demist and your heated seats. What an absolutely wonderful thing. We've got buttons for volume on the stereo, and we've also got a little rocker on the steering wheel for the volume. The only thing I'd say with those volume controls is that they're very, very incremental. So if you go up like by 3 clicks up, in some cars that will go from you can barely hear it to it's blowing your head off. In this, it goes from you can barely hear it to you can just about hear it. So you perhaps need a few more button presses than you might like. In terms of physical connectivity, we've got one USB-C just down here, and then we've got a USB-C and a 12-volt charging socket inside this little storage cubby here. Generally speaking, I think this is a really well-designed interior. It's not flash, it's not the most colourful thing in the world, but it feels very good quality. You're not distracted when you're driving. Everything's sort of where you expect it to be, and it feels made to last. In the back here, there's plenty of room. I'm about 5'9", 5'10", and there's about that much knee room for me with the driver's seat in my normal position. Plenty of headroom, about that. So you'd be fine in here at 6 foot or maybe just over. I don't think you'd want 3 full-size adults in the back of this car, however, because the middle seat's a little bit of a non-event, mainly because the transmission tunnel really eats into the footroom in quite a big way. And secondly, these rear seats don't offer you masses of support as the front ones actually do. More on that later. There is a cup holder in the door card here, and one USB-C down there, and apart from that, it's all very functional, very good, slightly unremarkable. Just before we start the test drive, I want to tell you a bit more about these seats because they're just so comfortable. They hold you perfectly in place, and I think it's impossible not to find a comfortable position in them. There is an electronically controlled lumbar support in this one, and it's one of the most aggressive lumbar supports I've ever known. You can inflate it to the point that it's almost pushing you against the windscreen if you want to. There's no sort of fancy controls, it's mostly manual on here, but I think it's just such a lovely thing. It just cossets you wonderfully. And the cloth they've used is fairly unexceptional. It's just plain black cloth in this one. But again, it's just a lovely thing to spend your time in. You might be thinking, this all sounds wonderful, but how much is it actually going to cost me? They start at £31,000 and end up about £36,000. They all come with a 10-year, 100,000 mile warranty. And I mean, that just speaks volumes of the quality of Toyota, that they can happily stick a 100,000 mile, 10-year warranty on their car as standard. Hats off to them really, because there aren't too many manufacturers that are offering something similar on an internal combustion engine car. Speaking of that engine, there are several available. So we start off with a 1.8 litre petrol hybrid, so self-charging hybrid. That means you don't have to plug it in. That gives you 140 brake horsepower, 0 to 62 in 10.2 seconds, and a claimed 60.1 mpg. You've then got a 2 litre petrol hybrid that gives you 197 horsepower, 0 to 62 in 8.4 and 57.6 mpg. And then you've got a 2 litre plug-in hybrid, which is 223 brake horsepower, 41 miles of all-electric range, and 7.4 seconds to 62. We're not lacking for power, we're not lacking for speed, and we'll explain a bit more about that in the test drive. So the car I've got on test is about 34.5 grand. It's the 1.8 design front-wheel drive. So it is the lowest powered version of the car, but at no point does it feel like it's lacking for anything. On paper, I probably would have chosen the 2 litre self-charging hybrid if I were thinking of buying one for myself. But in reality, this one gives you everything you need. And I don't think you need to wander too far up the trim level either, because this is very well equipped, despite it being sort of a mid-range trim level with obviously the entry level drivetrain. You've got an eCVT in this one, so it does have the characteristics of a traditional CVT gearbox at times, but they only really come across under harsh acceleration, and in a car like this you're not harshly accelerating that often, so it doesn't annoy you anywhere much as it would have done in perhaps this car's predecessor. It's a little bit of a breezy day today, and you can certainly hear the wind hitting those wing mirrors, but aside from that, it's a reasonably quiet cabin. Feels nice and refined, extremely comfortable. I don't find it at all fidgety. I don't find it particularly boaty either. It's just a nice mix between sort of comfort and ride quality generally. Just a nice thing to pass your time in, really. So many cars these days are a bit too complex than they need to be when it comes to living with them on a day-to-day basis. And apart from the fact that I get in this and switch something off every time I get into it, it's a piece of cake. Like, the infotainment system just works. It performs amazingly well in terms of its frugality. So you're not at the petrol station every 10 minutes. And it can swallow up most things you need to put in it, whether they be people or things. And that just works for me on a day-to-day basis as a car that you can just buy and sort of forget about. Take it for a service when it's due, and otherwise kind of forget about it. Toyota have done a great job with this. I've driven just about everything in the current Toyota lineup, and for me, this is one of the cars of the moment. I actually really like the Yaris Cross as well, and I was really surprised by the fact that I liked it so much, but this perhaps pips it. This is a brilliant thing to drive. The fact that it's got such interesting styling as well, you know, Toyota could sometimes be accused of being a tad bland with their design, but the fact that this looks so interesting as well, I think it looks really cool. I can imagine some people won't like the look of it, but I think it's really cool. I think it's a great bit of design. The fact that it's an interesting thing to look at, you know, is another big tick against it for me. And what more can I say other than if I were in the market for a small SUV, this would be somewhere near the top of my list. Now, you might think 34.5 grand is a wee bit punchy for a car of this size, and it probably is. But don't forget that 10-year, 100,000 mile warranty. Don't forget that Toyota are, year after year, one of the very most reliable car manufacturers on the planet. When you look at any kind of driver survey, they'll be in either first or second place. And that goes a long way in my book. And if you do find that price a bit too punchy, check out the link to Lease Loco that's in the video description and pinned as the top comment, because sometimes the RRP figure doesn't actually make a jot of difference, because lease deals that are around can make things very attractive. So if you haven't delved into that world before, give that link a little click. It does help support the channel. And it will take you straight to all the latest deals on the Toyota CHR at the time you click. You might just be surprised. You never know. I hope you've enjoyed this review, folks. Just as a reminder, reviews on my channel are completely independent. They are completely unbiased, and they are completely honest. You may agree or disagree with some of the things that I say in this, but it's my honest opinion that I'm giving you, and that's always going to be the way it is on my channel. Thanks for watching. Please give the video a thumbs up. Please subscribe if you haven't already done so, and I'll catch you on the next one.